Hey guys, Omni here. We're going to be checking out a breakdown of the Easter eggs and details we missed during Eternals. New Rockstars Eric Voss is going to be breaking us down and leading us through this little journey. So if you want to check this out, if you want to stick around, this is going to be quite the lengthy little run. Their video is 32 minutes, which means ours is going to clock in quite a bit longer than this. So that being said, if you want to check it out yourself, feel free to check them out over on their channel. I love these guys to death. Check them out, subscribe. Links to their video is also going to be in the description if you want to check it out yourself. But guys, let's go ahead and see what Eric has found. Here we go.
Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Eric Voss, and this is a breakdown of Marvel's Eternals. A literally groundbreaking game changer with scale so epic that even the main characters are like, woof, do we need all of us for this? I loved how this movie redefined the mythology and the rules of the MCU, so I am gonna break this down scene by scene for all of the Easter eggs, visual details, cinematic influences, and deeper layers of meaning that you might have missed. By the way, you can support New Rockstars by checking out our Eternals-inspired latest Obsession shirt, Immortal Unity, with a really cool Art Deco design at newrockstarsmerch.com.
I like that.
Available only for a limited time though. There's
Might
also
have to check it out.
fearsome Celestial shirt available. Check out all of our great options at
Ooh,
newrockstarsmerch.com.
I like that one.
The film opens with the words, "In the beginning." Just that text, simply on black, which, of course, the first 3 words of the Bible, establishing this film as its own book of Genesis origin story for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. There's mention of the universe's first son and Arishem, a celestial, the god of this universe, and when ecological disaster wipes out our civilization so that all that's left is a Disney Plus subscription watched by a Wall-E robot, what advanced alien races think our god is too. This Star Wars-esque scroll says the Celestials came before the 6 singularities and the dawn of creation, referring to the Infinity Stones that Wong explained were created by the Big Bang, meaning the Celestials predated the Big Bang and might have created the Infinity Stones and were likely unaffected by Thanos' snap. The number 6, apparently sacred to the MCU, might have even be rooted in the Celestials having their 6 eyes. Celestials were Marvel Comics creations of Jack Kirby. They're giant armored space gods who created mankind on Earth alongside Eternals and Deviants. In Guardians of the Galaxy, we briefly saw the Celestial Eson the Searcher, and nowhere is the severed head of a Celestial, and Peter Quill's father, Ego, claimed to be a Celestial as well. Here we meet the 10 Eternals as they float past the sun in their ship called the Domo. In the Eternals comics, Domo was actually the name of an Eternal who administered the affairs on Olympia, answering directly to Zuras, Thena's father. Used to be a secretary, now he's a ship that gets wrecked. Nomo Domo. But we already know something is different about the Eternals origin story in this film because they arrived to Earth already manufactured. We later hear that they think they come from a separate planet called Olympia, when in the comics, the Celestials create the Eternals on Earth from genetic experiments alongside humans and deviants. And Olympia is a place on Earth as well. Ooh, baby, do you know what that's worth? So seeing them just delivered here and then booted up, all just little clues that these are actually synthetic beings with no real genetic history alongside humanity, and we're just fed this false narrative. Throughout all this, composer Ramin Djawadi scores the imagery with haunting organ music, evoking Hans Zimmer's organ score for Interstellar, both of which cast all this cosmic imagery with the tones of a church, inviting us to behold these sacred events with reverence and awe. The Domo looms into view upon ancient Mesopotamia, 5000 BC. Director Chloe Zhao's imagery showing the Domo in profile as a rectangular shape evokes the mysterious arrival of the monolith in Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey, which symbolically served the same function as the Domo does here. Advanced tech coming from above, allowing early humans to finally evolve. An amphibious deviant washes up, much like the seminal first fish that jumped from water to land in our evolutionary history. But unlike the deviants in the comics, these have a silvery, wispy anatomy, like the barbs of a catfish. It's gonna sting ya. And it's all strung together into these mythological forms like griffins and dragons. And notice how they come with a second set of eyes, 4 in total, which links them visually to the Celestials, whose helmets have 6 eye circles. The deviants just being 1 rung below from that. And then Eternals and humans 1 rung below that with just the 2 eyes. Just another cool detail hinting that the deviants were also crafted in the Celestials' image, and might have in a way at one point been preferred bird. This fisherman calmly tells his son to run, sacrificing himself to save his boy. It's just interesting how despite the Eternals' divine gifts after gifts, really the best, most noble qualities about humanity are already evident in these humans. The Eternals help them repel the deviants, each using their powers in different ways. Like we see Icarus's flight and laser vision, Makari's super speed, Kingo's finger gun energy blast, Circe's matter transfiguration, Thena's casting of weapons, Gilgamesh's power punches, Phastos's tech assembly, Sprite's illusion casting, Druig's mind control, and then Ajax, last but not least, heals Icarus's wounds. And notice how whenever they use their powers, they all kind of take the same form. A glow of golden cosmic magic emanating from the contours of their armor, and actually you can even see Makari's trailing behind her as she zips that boy to safety, almost like a puppet string. Just a way of showing how all of this is just rooted from the Celestials, like a string of Christmas lights, all strung from the same wall.
It's like a bunch of wires coming out of them too. I like the design, it's so strange.
Ceremonial golden dagger recovered from the Sumerian port city of Ur in a royal tomb. So making this village that very civilization. The Sumerians were the earliest known civilization of ancient Mesopotamia, living among the Tigris and Euphrates river valleys, which was one of 4 major waterways on Earth that early civilizations arose upon, along with the Nile, the Indus, and the Yellow River. This film suggests that the spark that enabled all of human civilization to ignite was the Eternals' arrival, and Zhao frames that spark with this handoff, evoking Michelangelo's creation of Adam, God on the right, man on the left. The Marvel Studios title card actually opens with a quick flash of Kirby's comic depictions of the Six-Eyed Celestial. We also see Shang-Chi added to the M of Marvel Studios. And then we hear the music of Pink
I didn't even
Floyd's
think to
Time,
look
the opening track
for
to their
Shang-Chi.
epic album Dark Side of the Moon. Really the best song to just space out to. The lyrics lament losing track of time, kicking around on a piece of the ground, waiting for someone or something to show you the way. Just like how the Eternals have been stuck on Earth, burning time, centuries, millennia, waiting for further instructions from the Celestials. Cersei's now in London, working at the Natural History Museum, where that Sumerian dagger is now a relic on display. On her way into work, she greets Charles Darwin, whose theory on evolution might have been Eternal inspired. She also gives an apprehensive look at a dinosaur fossil, almost as if these previous apex predators on Earth might have become prey to their mortal enemies, the Deviants.
See, that's kind of what I thought it implied, because they said that like that's a good little detail right there, that the Eternals or the Celestials would prep a planet for intelligent life by wiping out all the predators on it. So they would send the Deviants first to cleanse the planet so that the intelligent life wouldn't be fed upon. So I was like, so the Deviants wiped out the dinosaurs. That's basically what I thought they were saying. And then from that point onward, then they send in the Eternals to kind of let things grow up, and then Dane Whitman doing poetry from
In this broad
Walt
earth of
Whitman.
ours, amid the measureless grossness and slag, enclosed and safe within its central heart, nestles the seed of perfection, going on to say that the poet's optimism in humanity echoes our recent universal victory, the return of half our population. Of course, he's referencing the events of the blip in Avengers Endgame, but also this quote foreshadows how in our Earth, within its heart, nestles the seed of a celestial. Cersei, of course, lectures about apex predators, foreshadowing the return of the apex predators, the Deviants. Then at Dane's birthday party, Cersei gives Dane a ring that he notices from the Middle Ages, and it bears a raven emblem. Dane Whitman becomes, in the comics, the Black Knight, a successor to a long line of warriors who all bear the ebony blade, the first bearer being Dane's ancestor, Sir Percy of Scandia, who lived during the reign of King Arthur. Cersei says this raven is his family crest. In the comics, Black Knight's chestplate bears a raven emblem. Dane asks Cersei,
Are you a wizard, like Doctor Strange?
I'm supernormal.
Cersei's powers come from the Celestials, but the eldritch magic of Doctor Strange and the Sorcerers may very well come from the same source. Later, actually, Cersei transfigures a boulder into birds, visually similar to how Doctor Strange turned one of Thanos' attacks into butterflies in Infinity War. The Deviant attacks them in Camden Lock, and Sprite tries to distract it by casting duplicates of herself and Cersei, though notice how when the Deviant knocks her down, it breaks the illusion and the duplicates fade away. Now, Sprite's duplicates aren't tangible like the duplicates that Loki can cast with his sorcery, so Icarus arrives to help, and Cersei turns a crashing double-decker bus into rose petals. Cersei finally admits to Dane the truth about the Eternals' history, claiming her understanding that she came from a planet called Olympia, and Dane asks,
Why didn't you guys help fight Thanos? Or any war, or all the other terrible things throughout history?
We were instructed not to interfere in any human conflicts unless deviants are involved.
She goes on to say that had they protected humanity from everything, mankind would never develop the way that they were meant to. And to be clear, Thanos is an Eternal born with a deviant gene. He is a son of Alars, who was brother to Zuras, Thena's father, and Thanos was also the brother to...
See, that's something that like I had a question about in the movie was like if he was born with a deviant gene, how? Because the before they were kind of given this lineage, right? In the comics, they were just another organic being created alongside humans and deviants. But in this, they're kind of like these automatons, these hyper sophisticated androids. Are they organic? It's not really very clear on it. So was he born? Was he created? Was it a deviant or a Eternal that managed to procreate?
to Eros, aka Star Fox, as confirmed in the post-credit scene. But it sounds like these Eternals were kept in the dark, mostly
the comic
on
origin
Earth,
and this
so
origin
they would probably have no
differ.
reason to know Thanos' Eternal or his deviant lineage. Dane hears the name Icarus and cites the Greek myth of Icarus who flew too close to the sun, and Cersei confirms that Sprite made up that myth when they were in Athens. So all of the Eternals really have analogs in real-world history, like Icarus inspired the tragedy of Icarus, Athena inspired Athena, Greek goddess of war and leader of Athens, Phastos inspired Hephaestus, Greek god of the forge, Circe inspired Circe from Greek mythology in the Odyssey, who transforms humans into animals, Ajax inspired Ajax, the hero second only to Achilles, Gilgamesh inspired the great Epic of Gilgamesh from Sumerian mythology, considered the oldest narrative of human history, Sprite inspired figures like sprites from European mythology, but also, as stated in this film, Tinkerbell, which is a nod to the comics, in which Sprite actually visits playwright J.M. Barrie and inspired him for his character of Peter Pan. Kingo may have been linked with Kingu from Babylonian mythology, and Druig doesn't really seem to have a mythological link, but his name does sound like the Russian word drug for friend, maybe the way he sees himself as a friend to humanity. But back in
Drug was
Cersei
probably
Sprite's
one of my
spot,
favorite
MCU
characters
news
in the
outlet
movie.
WHIH shows back up on the TV, reporting on the global earthquakes, and Sprite unsheaths this blade, the same blade she later uses to stab Cersei in the back during the final battle. We flash back to the city of Babylon in 575 BC. The film actually reconstructed the famous Ishtar Gate, currently on display at the Pergamon Museum in Berlin, and after they slay this deviant, Ajax is summoned by the celestial Ereshim the Judge. I love how visually Chloe Zhao achieves this awesome scale with Ereshim's whole design, asteroids and other space dust orbiting his massive form. Also notice how his armor in many places appears scratched, crumbled, weathered, giving him a semblance of age and life experience, at least compared to Jemiah's cleaner armor in the later shot. Like, these might be battle scars from a kind of conflict that left Nowhere beheaded. This first shot of Ereshim actually only shows part of his enormous head, like it's impossible for us to take him in all at once, but they personify him only through his voice and these 6 glowing eye holes. So later in the film, as Tiamat emerges and Ereshim returns in judgment, just those 6 eyes alone signal
so
to
haunting.
us how
I love
massive
it.
these things are in full. Now the Domo is parked inside of the city of Babylon, inside the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, which is one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. 2 other ancient wonders, the Lighthouse of Alexandria and the Pyramids of Giza, appeared in the MCU in Loki. At the feast, Sprite regales them in what sounds like the actual Epic of Gilgamesh, as Makari barters for the Emerald Tablet, which is a real-world relic containing cryptic hermetic text, which has been obsessed over by Islamic and European alchemists who associated it with the Philosopher's Stone as a means of producing gold, but it contains the famous derived passage of as above, so below, which is interesting to think about the context of the Celestials, right? As they are above, so they are below our feet, sleeping. And that Celestial, Tiamat, begins gold, but is turned back into an elemental form of marble stone. Ironic considering Dane calls Cersei King Midas later on. Icarus and Cersei declare their love for each other, they get it on, and they get married in the Gupta Empire of Impia in 480. There's actually a quick shot of the Great Wall of India at Kumbhalgarh, the second longest wall in the world after the Great Wall of China. I like how in the shot of the other Eternals cheering on their wedding, Sprite looks pissed with envy, of course, and Athena gives an apprehensive stare as she never fully trusted Icarus. Cersei Cersei, Sprite, and Icarus arrive at Ajax, South Dakota ranch. Icarus is the last one to walk up, though, probably since he knows what they're gonna find there. Then the speaking sphere floats up from Ajax's corpse to Cersei, and now Airsham tells Cersei, "It's almost time to be disqualified." Then we flash back to Tenochtitlan, sorry if I said that wrong, 1521 AD. This was the great capital of the Aztec Empire that was sacked by Spanish forces led by conquistador Hernan Cortez in this year. Another important historical turning point in human history. It allows Spain and other European powers to end up dominating the Americas. Thanks, smallpox. Oh my god, I just realized that's the same way Florida is going to conquer all of us. Anyway, seeing these Spanish soldiers wipe out the Aztecs with firearms, the Eternals debate intervention, and then Athena suffers a breakdown from mad weary, which they later define as one's mind fracturing under the weight of memories. Like, you know, anytime you think about high school and the spiraling begins, the skateboarders were so cruel, we're all gonna die. Ajax offers to wipe Athena's memory, but Gilgamesh says he will seclude her and watch over her, and then Druig splits off by making the Spanish and Aztecs drop their weapons and follow him into the jungle. They track down Kingo on the set of a Bollywood film in Mumbai, and he tells them his movie is The Legend of Icarus, thus his costume matching Icarus's old design, and he introduces my favorite character in the movie, Karun.
Actually, when we first met, he thought I was a vampire, and he tried to stake me through the heart.
I've apologized so many times.
Not quite enough times, very close.
I guess another MCU vampire mention, after one we heard in Loki.
You know, we brought in Kree, Titans, vampires. Why is it the two orphan demigods are such a pain in the ass?
Just interesting how vampires are increasingly becoming a thing in the MCU, setting the stage for Blade to exist at some point. A promise that gets delivered in the final seconds of the post-credit scene with a vocal cameo by Mahershala Ali as the MCU's Blade. Kingo joins them despite having a sequel to shoot, and he mentions how they just got BTS to do a cameo, which I feel like has got to be a meta nod to the pop star cameo in this movie's post-credit scene of a superhero franchise. On Kingo's private jet, he collects Captain America's original shield from the first Cap film. He also shows his movie posters in which he posed as multiple generations of his own phony dynasty, like his great-grandfather, his grandfather's father, etc.
I love
the
that
movies
moment.
include titles like Yuva Prim, Taliko, Kel, and Phantom Gun. Looks like a 007 type movie. But notice how he changed up the facial hair of each generation. And if you think about it, this would have been under 100 years of history, so 5 generations means that Kingo refused to wait too long before reintroducing himself as like a younger, better-looking son. It's so funny. He like craves the spotlight that much. Cersei tells Kingo in Karun's documentary that she can turn rock into water, rock into wood, and rock into metal. Could be a bit of foreshadowing in the final act when she transformed the gold-colored metal back into marble rock, but also maybe you could see this as a way that she could have helped turn rock into vibranium, with her and Phastos helping the Wakandans in various ways. In Australia, they find the corpse of a deviant that Gilgamesh had killed recently. Karun thinks it's beautiful, showing how beauty truly is a matter of perspective, but also making me suspect that Karun could be a Skrull who, on the Skrull planet, evolved from the deviant race. Keep an eye on that one. Gilgamesh compares Karun to Alfred in Batman, one of 2 references to DC superheroes in this movie.
Dad, that's Superman with the cape and you're shooting laser beams out of your eye.
Now, obviously, the MCU references external pop culture all the time, but DC references in particular almost never come up in the MCU since Iron Man in 2008, aside from a very quick Super Friends reference in Iron Man 3. But as I explained in a recent video and confirmed by director Chloe Zhao, Eternals is all about embracing superhero mythology in general, like famous DC characters and characters like Thor, all rooted in our world and in this world in historical folklore and Jungian archetypes. Then, suffering a bit of mad weary, Athena remembers one of the past planets they helped the Celestials destroy, saying, "Everyone in Century 6 is going to die. It's too late. We can't save them." Century 6 is actually a lesser planet from Marvel Comics, a planet whose population ends up getting sold into slavery. Gilgamesh and Kingo both use Odin's name in place of God, and then Kingo mentions Thor.
Thor used to follow me around when he was a little kid. Now he's a famous Avenger and won't return my calls.
Meaning Thor and other Asgardians may be aware of the Eternals on Earth. Sprite's Illusions did earlier show a Viking ship, and 575 BC would have been long before Norse Vikings on Earth were ever around, so she might have been referencing their friends, the Asgardians, and these 2 groups of people might have known each other, which makes us now wonder, what are the Celestials' relationship with the Asgardians? In the Marvel Comics, the Asgardians were a special group that the Celestials created from an extra mutation cycle designed to reflect the mythology of the people they protect. So we'll see if this history comes up in Thor Love and Thunder, with characters like Gore the God Butcher, who carries a special sword that, in the comics did sever the head of the Celestial Nowhere. And they bring up the Avengers.
So now that Captain Rogers and Iron Man are both gone, who do you think's gonna lead the Avengers?
I could lead them.
Yeah, they tell Icarus that Ajax didn't even choose him to lead them. And Icarus laughs it off, but he does seem a bit stung. I think it's because he still feels pretty guilty about what he did to Ajax. It's also interesting that Sprite just called Steve Captain Rogers, meaning they must have been aware of him back in the 40s when he was still an army soldier. Maybe also a nod to the fact that Captain America in the MCU is now technically Sam Wilson. Arishem reveals the dark truth to Cersei,
Yeah,
that the
more than
emergence
likely.
is the hatching of a sleeping celestial nestled inside Earth called Tiamat, and that all the celestials are born by gestating inside host planets, feeding on the energy of the planet's life forms, and then emerge when they reach a critical energy level, and then the celestials recycle that energy to create new suns and new galaxies. So Tiamat being secretly buried inside Earth comes directly from the Marvel Comics, in which Tiamat the Dreaming Celestial arises from under San Francisco. Also gotta say, nice to call one accurately for a change. Arishem shows him
Tiamat is also the mythological creature, like the multi-headed dragon, isn't it? It's like a demon of destruction, traditionally. Myth. Primordial goddess of the ocean and personification of chaos. Gave birth to the first generation of gods, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Big ol', well, I mean, there's some different depictions, clearly, but I think I might be thinking of the D&D version of Tiamat. Yeah, they're the Mesopotamian pantheon. Anyway, moving on.
Crashing up through the crust of the Earth shortly after the planet's population resurges after Bruce Banner ended the blip in Avengers Endgame, and in that moment you can see specific population centers suddenly repopulating, including a little bright spot on Wakanda. As Tiamat's giant hand reaches up through the surface, you can see the city electrical grids suddenly flickering out. Just a frightening example of scale and the billions of lives that would have been lost. Arishem also reveals that the Eternals are not from the planet Olympia, but they are actually memoryless synthetic beings sent to host planets with celestial seeds in order to make sure intelligent life continues to evolve, protecting that life from the deviants, whom the Celestials also created, initially sent to clear out the apex predators on that planet. Arishem mentions losing control of the deviants as they evolved, and we see what looks like some Skrulls. These shape-shifting Skrulls were actually the deviant race on that planet, thus the link with the deviants, well, less developed shape-shifting abilities in this movie. The Eternals are constructed in a world forge that stores their memories from past lives.
Yeah, because these deviants were frozen, so they were like an initial batch. They didn't really get to turn into a race like the Skrulls, so their kind of path was interrupted. They did look a little more Skrull-like towards the end after they had gotten some Eternal juice into them. Didn't think about that. I forgot about the whole freezing process and how they were kind of trapped in time, all of this, since they initially arrived.
Cersei actually sees an assembly line of her past selves, production design evoking the partly formed
Made me think
AI
of
robots
iRobot.
in the movie Ex Machina. So at this point in the movie, maybe where Eternals either loses you or hooks you. For me, hook, line, and sinker. I mean, similar to the way Terrence Malick's Tree of Life departs its earthbound drama for a macroscopic interlude halfway through the movie, this sudden expository spectacle is designed to stun and to overwhelm us, make us ask ourselves, well, what do we matter then? And in the case of the story, to shock Cersei into blind, trembling obedience, just like our Book of Genesis is really designed to do, folks. Waiting for someone or something to show you the way. Really posing this movie's deeper question. Can one's purpose be defied for love? A debate that plays out among the Eternals. Kingo argues, we're not the bad guys, we did our jobs. One thing I really love about this movie, the conflict arises from everyone pursuing their purpose, be it survival, reproduction, or protection. It's an elemental Darwinian struggle, a battle of justifiable ideals. It actually evokes a classic Greek drama like Aeschylus's The Eumenides, in which which immortal Greek gods debate the sins and worthiness of the human mortals. It's the same debate of free will versus determinism playing out with Loki and Kang, with the Watcher of What If, and it raises the bar of intellect in the MCU, and I am here for it. Ultimately, Cersei sides with the rationale Cap used in Infinity War, that the lives of others are never worth trading, therefore the emergence must be stopped. And they find Druig in a remote village of the Amazon, mind-controlling humans, an idyllic cult free from conflict. It's actually kind of fun to see how humanity is evolving in its own microcosm there. There's a blacksmith hammering away, reminding us of Tony Stark in the cave in the first Iron Man. We hear Cersei's ringtone, it's Lizzo's Juice, and Kingo and Druig face off.
Kingo, the movie star. I've directed some things too.
Yeah, Kingo says he's made some online content, but doesn't do it for the views. Hey, neither do we, Kingo. I'm just kidding. We totally do it for the views. We are horny for views here. We are the Eros of views. Cersei tells Dane to call his uncle and make amends with him. A nod to Dane Whitman's uncle, Nathan Garrett in the comics, the previous Black Knight, who's actually a villainous character. Historically, the bearer of the Ebony Blade, not a good guy, which is why Dane may not get along with him. In the comics, Dane actually inherits a castle from his uncle, and that's where he finds the Ebony Blade. In fact, I think that's where that second post-credit scene is taking place. Then deviants attack the village. Kingo uses his finger guns to explode one of their heads, while Cersei turns another into a tree, showing that she actually can transform sentient beings despite her belief otherwise. But the alpha deviant kills Gilgamesh and absorbs his life force, turning that deviant into a more humanoid talking form named Crow, the leader of the deviants in the comics, who's voiced by Pennywise actor Bill Skarsgård, who accuses the Eternals of hunting his kind,
I did not
saying,
know
"You
that.
are not saviors, Eternals. You are murderers, and you'll float too." But
What
since
the
Druig
fuck?
doesn't think he's powerful enough to mind control the whole Celestial, they decide
I
to
couldn't
seek out
hear him.
Phastos,
I
who
could not
we
hear
flash
that
back
voice
to
in
at the site of
out of
Hiroshima,
Crow.
August 8th, 1945, the day American forces dropped an atomic bomb
That's cool.
on the city. And standing in the ashes, Ajax consoles
Another
Phastos, who
Skarsgård
cries,
in the
"I did
MCU.
this. If my technology hadn't helped in the past, Druig was right. This was a mistake. These people, they're not worth saving."
I
His
like this
regret is
moment.
based on that of J. Robert Oppenheimer, one of the scientists whose research led to the atomic bomb, something he deeply regretted and fiercely criticized in his later years. Now Phastos lives with his husband Ben and son Jack, who mistakes Icarus for Superman. Phastos tells his family that their names are Isaac and Sylvia, a nod to their human aliases in the comics: Isaac Ike Harris and Sylvia Cersei. On the table is a Star Wars book. Now, Star Wars has already popped up in the MCU before. Peter Parker is obsessed with Star Wars. He cites Empire and Civil War. He collects Star Wars Legos and figurines. And then, of course, Cap lists Star Wars in his notebook. But here, along with a Superman reference, it's just another piece of pop culture rooted in eternal linked mythology. Like George Lucas definitely based Luke Skywalker's hero's journey on Arthurian legend, the same Arthur known by the Eternals and by Dane's ancestors. Testing the walls of Phastos' safe house, Icarus also tests the table.
I bet you've built the perfect safe house. And what's this even made of? Vibranium?
For Icarus to assume Phastos made a table out of vibranium, just another example how things like Wakandan vibranium tech might have been aided by Phastos, and he may have been the source who supplied.
He might get to it at some point. Obviously, we're not there yet, but I also think that they might have had a hand in the tech that is involved in Shang-Chi's rings. But
Howard Stark
We'll see.
with that vibranium for Cap's shield in World War II, but then maybe quit helping the United States defenses when they used his fission technology for the Manhattan Project. As Phastos leaves his family, Skeeter Davis's The End of the World plays, which we heard in the first trailer, and then they return to the Iraqi archaeological dig site where the ruins of Babylon do rest in our world. As a UNESCO World Heritage Site, here he raises the domo from the earth, and inside they find Makari, whom Kingo calls Mrs. Havisham, a reference to the crazy old hoarder from Charles Dickens' Great Expectations. Makari's wearing a shirt for H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds. You think about it, a pretty similar plot about extraterrestrial world enders who end up not being able to cut it because the germs on this planet are just too resistant. Now, as a speedster, Makari has apparently just gathered various historical artifacts, including an ancient Egyptian statue of the deity Bastet.
She's really
who was an
obsessed with
influence
that
on
kind
the
of stuff,
Wakandan
like
panther
from what we
deity
saw
of
with their
Bast,
interactions
a painting called
before.
Le Liaison de Musique, which actually hangs in the Louvre, a Roman imperial eagle staff with SPQR, Senatus Populus K Romanus, the People's Republic of Rome, a bundle of scrolls, maybe from the Lost Library of Alexandria, a Big Mac in its carton, the Holy Grail, the same design from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, a statue called the Chimera
nice.
of Arezzo, which in real life resides in the National Archaeological Museum in Florence, a throne that I thought might have been the United Kingdom's St. Edward's chair, their throne, but it's not that one, it's just one similar to it, and a medieval suit of armor, one that you might find in the UK's Tower of London. Remember Happy Hogan and the rest using some of that armor to fend off the Stark drones, and then a PlayStation VR headset. Thena swings around a sword that's
But even she cannot get her hands on a PS5.
Sprite thinks is the ebony blade, again, Dane Whitman's Black Knight's family sword, but Athena corrects her, it's Excalibur, the sword of King Arthur from legend, and Sprite says, well, Arthur always did have a crush on you. Meanwhile, the others trade Twinkies for the Emerald Tablet, showing that Makkari did eventually get her hands on it. Phastos invents new bracelets to help them form the Unimind to hack Tiamat, which is a term for all the Eternals combining their consciousness into a big brain that can fight off other big forces in the comics. We flash back 6 days before when Icarus visited Ajax on her ranch, where she tells him about the oncoming emergence, and he's like, awesome, great, mission accomplished. Let's pack it home, boys. But she says 5 years ago, Thanos delayed the emergence. Now, since we just learned that Thanos and his brother Eros were both Eternals of Titan, this may reframe Thanos' goal of erasing half of all life across the universe instead as a way of disrupting celestial reproduction. I've said it before, I'll say it again, Thanos did nothing wrong. He had a plan. The guy was on our side, had we only listened. But since Ajax was a softie who wanted to stop the emergence, Icarus transports her to the worst place on Earth, Alaska. Just kidding, I've never been there. But there's a melted glacier with some oil workers being fed on by unfrozen deviants. But the deviants now attack Ajax, killing her, stealing her healing power, and then regrouping, spreading south. Now, as the emergence begins, Makkari zips all around the world looking for that hatching point. I love the way they depict her speedster abilities in this movie. The world zips past her rapidly, including we see her pass the Christ the Redeemer statue in Rio de Janeiro, as opposed to often how we see speedsters in other movies where they use relative slow motion to show super speed. Both look really cool. This is just a whole new way of showing it. I really appreciated it. And then she finds that point at an island in the Indian Ocean, and if you look behind her in the background, there are a couple oil platforms drilling away. I love this detail. It just gives this battle a backdrop of a reminder of just one way part of humanity doesn't care about this planet that the Eternals are fighting to save. Icarus reveals his betrayal of Ajax, and Sprite ends up siding with him. Of course she does. Now, Kingo, I thought was interesting, does side with Icarus in theory. He can't let go of his function, but out of not wanting to hurt his family, he benches himself from the fight. Sprite Houdinis herself and Icarus out of here. Actually, in the credits montage, there is a poster for a Houdini magic show with Sprite whispering in his ear, suggesting she might have influenced the great magician and escape artist. So backup plan, Phastos has to extract Cersei's spear as kind of a backdoor hack to Tiamat, setting up this final battle on the volcanic island. Icarus crashes the domo, Cersei stalls the eruption, Makkari and Phastos use some awesome moves to pin Icarus to hold him down. Ajax seems to appear to Cersei, but it's all a trick by Sprite, who stabs her in the back and the Druid clubs Sprite in the head. Athena battles Crow in a cave, manages to conjure blades to slice him apart, but still Tiamat emerges. It looks epic in scale. I loved how this looked, and Cersei has to combine her strength with the others of the Unimind to reverse Midas Tiamat and turn his golden form into marble. Icarus breaks free of Phastos' restraints and angrily fires his laser eyes into the sky, evoking an iconic frame of Icarus from the comics. Icarus watches this go down, and memories of Cersei rewind through their time together, back to their wedding day, back to Babylon, and to the first moment they set eyes on Earth while they were still in its orbit, and Cersei said, "It's beautiful, isn't it? Beautiful." The same word Icarus taught himself to say in Akkadian or Babylonian, whatever version of the language it was back then,
like,
to Cersei
I am
the day that
beautiful.
he proposed. And so he fulfills his mythological destiny and flies way too close to the sun, like way too close, like into it. But despite this final conflict, Cersei can't help but feel grateful to the Celestials she just killed on the day of its birth, crediting it for her successful Unimind link. She says, "Tiamat joined our Unimind. We became one, even with Icarus and Sprite, and that's all because of Tiamat." Just interesting to think that Tiamat might have been okay with what Cersei was doing to it. Like, not all Celestials are on board with Arisham's way of doing things, and might be more willing to grant the underlings, like the Eternals, more free will. Just gives us hope for whatever Celestial Eros is about to summon with his.
If, like in mythology, it's a being of chaos, it would very much like to invoke free will onto the world rather than ordered death and destruction like the current Celestials, if that is the case, because the world is chaos, and free will in and of itself is chaos.
Sphere, answering the question of this movie's premise, our original purposes can be and should be defied for love. And in the post-credits scene we learn it's all thanks to the god of love. Cersei turns Sprite human, allowing her the chance to grow into an adult and live the mortal life she always wanted. A happy ending from another classic fairy tale, Pinocchio and the Blue Fairy. And there are no strings on her. Hey, that's an Ultron thing. Athena departs Earth on the Domo alongside Druig and Makkari. They're all seeking out Eternals on other planets, while Kingo, Sprite, and Cersei stay on Earth. But in the final scene, as Dane begins to tell Cersei that his family history is complicated and that it is his birthright to be the Black Knight, clouds form in the sky and Arishem Arishem appears, zipping Cersei up to him along with
Show
Phastos
me
and
what
Kingo,
you've
telling them,
got.
"You have chosen to sacrifice a celestial for the people of this planet. I will spare them, but your memories will determine if they are worthy to live, and I will return in judgment," allowing Arishem to complete his arc to become his title from the comics, Arishem the Judge. So this way, the film kind of leaves it open-ended whether humanity is worthy of its salvation, almost like a challenge to us to earn our right to exist. Now, if the movie Eternals didn't speak to you, that's totally okay. But is it the worst Marvel movie? Hell no, my friends. This film's deeper themes hit me hard, and I believe we will see the benefits of its contributions for years to come in the MCU. But I want to know your thoughts on the film in the comments below. You can support New Rockstars by checking out our merch options at newrockstarsmerch.com. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at EAVoss.
I liked it
Follow
quite
New
a bit.
Rockstars and subscribe for breakdowns of everything you love.
Like I've said in my previous video, I think it's in my top 10. But yeah, great breakdown, Eric, as always. This was a fun one, and I'm not going to hang on to you guys too much longer. I think I said what I needed to say as we were going through the video. One thing that I didn't get a chance to interject in because I feel like I just kind of missed my spot was I learned, and I mentioned this in my live stream today, that he talked about why Superman, Batman, and the DC characters who were designed as mythological figures were mentioned here in a movie about mythological figures. Another part of that was that Chloe Zhao herself kind of referenced and said she was inspired by was actually Zack Snyder's Man of Steel. Regardless of how you feel about it, it was trying to tackle those same themes, and a lot of that inspiration kind of melded its way in here. And for me, I think she was able to interject a little bit more energy into this than I thought even in Zack Snyder's version of Man of Steel was. I think it got all the myth but none of the humanity, and I think this struck a perfect balance of both for me, as well as heightening the scale of the MCU ever larger. So, I don't know. I really liked it. I know it's been divisive, but I quite enjoyed the film. If you want to check out my spoiler-free review, it's on the channel. You can also check out my reaction to Eric's breakdown on the post-credits scene. They did put that video out yesterday. But, guys, what did you think of the movie? What did you think of the breakdown? Sound off the comments. Let me know your thoughts down below. We'll carry on the conversation after the video. If you want to join our Discord, we can talk about it there as well. Links to that are in the description. Before we go, I want to shout out our channel legends, Manny Share, Ryan Karen, Jason Coleman, Philly Vane, Yori Korskov, Margaret Grace, Mary Bradley, and Jeffrey Hale. Thank you guys so much for your support. But guys, that's another one down, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care, everybody.